it's really interesting when we start taking a look at what is blocking me creatively or what is blocking me from living a more fulfilled life. I really appreciate the way that Julia Cameron breaks this down in chapter 1 of The Artist's Way. Couple things come up here. One is the binary thinking that tends to keep these blocks in place. And it's only through doing a little investigative inquiry that the binary thinking, the either ors, start to come to the surface. So, for example, a belief system that I had been holding subconsciously for a very long time was this belief that I can either be a fulfilled creative being or have fulfilling relationships. I was in this binary of either or. And historically, what I would do is when I got into a relationship, I would pour all of my creative energy into the other person to the point that I was neglecting my own art. And that would end up turning into resentment and me feeling disconnected and the relationships just not working out. How many other people can relate to this? This is actually one of the examples that Julia Cameron cites in The Artist's Way. And let me read it. I can either be romantically happy or an artist, right? I can either be financially successful or an artist. So these are these binaries that can come up. And then I really love the way that Julia Cameron speaks to the inner critic, the censor, the block in this way. Your block doesn't want you to see that it actually is possible to have both. Your block doesn't want you to see that it's possible to move beyond the binary, right? Here are her words. Its whole plan of attack is to make you irrationally afraid of some dire outcome that you are too embarrassed to even mention. And because you're too embarrassed to even mention it because it's so silly, that's what actually perpetuates the blocking, right? So she has this really interesting exercise where she has you just list out 10 times a phrase like, I am a brilliant creative and a successful storyteller. Or actually, let me use the exact words. I'm a brilliant artist and a prolific storyteller. So, whatever language you want to use for your own creative expression, go ahead and find it. And then list that out 10 times in your journal. And the whole practice here is listen to what pings that inner critic. Listen to what kind of resistances and what kind of stories start to show up when you start to speak about yourself and your creative life in an affirming way. And so in chapter 1, we're starting to gently get curious about what are those stories that do come up and where did those stories come from? And then how can we actually start working with affirmative language in ways that can help us find forward movement? Now, just to really underscore what this is all about here and the magnitude of just how much that inner critic, or we could say the negative bias, or that part of the brain wants to keep us stuck, because stuck to that part of the brain equals safety. It's safer to this part of the brain to stay stuck than it is to venture into unfamiliar territory. And that's why I get so lit up around the phrase to live creatively is to live courageously, because creative living is inherently living in relationship with the unknown in such a way where we're finding forward movement, we're cultivating curiosity. But let me just break down a little further. So this is from Julia Cameron's book, right on page 30 in chapter 1. Here is a list of commonly held negative beliefs. Now remember, we're taking a look at the negative beliefs that can actually be so embarrassing that we might not ever actually name them. But this is to also paint a picture of just how much this negative bias can really magnify our lens of perception. It's something like a 10-to-1 ratio of how much this part of our brain tends to focus on what isn't working or why we shouldn't make the next step, right? Okay, so here's a list of commonly held negative beliefs. I can't be a successful, prolific, or creative artist because I'm going to give you 20. You ready? Everyone will hate me. I will hurt my friends and family. I will go crazy. I will abandon my friends and family. I can't spell. I don't have good enough ideas. It will upset my mother and or father. I will have to be alone. I will find out I'm gay or straight, and I will be stuck straight or gay. These are examples that she lists. I will do bad work and not know it and look like a fool. I will feel too angry. I will never have any real money. I will get self-destructive and drink, drug, or sex myself to death. I will get cancer, AIDS, or a heart attack, or the plague. My lover will leave me. I will die. I will feel bad because I don't deserve to be successful. I will have only one good piece of work in me. It's too late. If I haven't become a fully functioning artist yet, I never will. Right? So these are just some examples of common beliefs that we can hold in our subconscious, which again are so silly or just out of range, that because it's silly, the silliness actually keeps it underground, right? So this book has changed my life. It continues to change my life. And I'm really curious in this cohort that we have running now, which by the way, we have a couple more depending on when you're listening to this. I'm recording this on Saturday, March 28th. And Monday, March 30th is actually when we'll be talking about chapter 1. So maybe we'll get a couple more folks joining in to this community. But the bottom line is this: creative recovery starts with having a willingness to take a look at what's been getting in the way and doing it in a way where we're cultivating enough safety within ourselves to just start peeling back the veil, in really gentle ways. And I love this so much. And I also really love that she suggests, once we have a better sense of what the limiting beliefs are, and, you know, I've been doing this work for 13 years, and I just did this exercise again, and there were so many, like, my sensor's language, it's not like my own sensor has gone away, but just cultivating more awareness around how, when, and where that sensor is showing up, and choosing to show up courageously anyways, for me, that's a huge part of this whole thing. But I do love how she encourages affirmative language, affirmations, as a way of spinning the disempowering self-talk into something that's more supportive. And this is actually how this mandala that's on my hoodie, that's on the cover of the Emergence deck, that's how this mandala came about. It was a way of spinning belief systems and thought patterns that logically I knew that this belief isn't true, but it was still playing in my subconscious. And what happened was, we're talking about this, my own internal belief of I can either have a fulfilled creative life or I can have loving relationships, right? Like, this is a binary that I was working with. And after a few years of being in the cocoon, I met a man at a yoga class. This was back in 2022 in the spring. And I went on a few dates with this guy, and I was starting to really get to like this guy. I was also showing up really different than I've ever shown up in relationships before, and just really being cautious and taking my time and still feeling kind of wobbly in my sense of self. But I was starting to really like this guy, and I was starting to lean into how I could have a deeply fulfilled romantic life and a deeply fulfilled creative life. And I wanted to live into that. And so as we were exploring, you know, the first few weeks, months of dating, I started to develop an attachment, you know, to this person. And then suddenly he just kind of ran away. He literally left the country and said, I can't even talk about this. I just need to leave. And my brain registered this as abandonment, right? So that really triggered my abandonment wound, and it triggered all of this self-talk around how, well, if he's leaving the country, if he's abandoning you, then it's probably because you did something wrong, Joanna. So I was with all of these thought patterns that were spinning around taking this guy's behavior personally. And I could see how it wasn't going to be helpful to take it personally, but the thought looping was just so intense. So what I did was I decided to take that thought looping and sit myself down every day and literally just bring myself to a canvas and be with all of the parts of me that were feeling triggered and activated. and just let those parts know, especially let that inner child know, hey, I'm here for you. You are so worth love, my love. You are so worthy of love. There's actually nothing wrong with you. You are perfect just the way you are. You are so worthy and deserving of love and of your own love. And so this is what I did with these butterflies, 108 butterflies. It was a 27-day process of just sitting with myself and affirming language that was more true and authentic, and letting my subconscious mind get on board with that. And I share all this about my own art in life because I feel like there might be something here that can be of benefit to others. And give this affirmative work time. Give it time. Having community around a process like this can be really supportive as well. And just finding ways to resource the really tender parts that can get activated when we're looking at the origin stories of the disempowered thoughts and beliefs to begin with. So hopefully something in here in chapter 1 of The Artist's Way and this little story about mandalas and affirmations was supportive for you. But I can share for myself that going through this process, and this was maybe mandala 30 or 40. I did a whole bunch of mandalas in 2020 up until 2022, 2023. It was a big part of my process, and I'm still revisiting them because there's something about mandala creation that just brings me into a state of presence so quickly. There's something about the rhythm and the repetition and the geometry and even working with the circle as a symbol of wholeness that to me is inherently just a path that helps me ground and helps me stay sane. And I can share from my own experience working with this repatterning, it led to behavior change. It led to behavior change, and it led to, I believe, an acceleration of my own capacity to just sort of process this rupture of this guy just suddenly leaving. And I was really starting to develop feelings for him and wanting to, take things to the next level. And I was also praying about it and just asking, please just let the best possible relationships nurture my life, and things that aren't in alignment with where I'm headed and what I want to be creating, just let them gently dissolve. And after I, was working with this prayer, this person literally just got on a plane and flew away. So, it really helped me just with the mandalas move through this process of affirming, look, this person's behavior is not about you, Joanna. It's not anything that you need to beat yourself up for or shame yourself for. You're perfectly lovable just the way you are. And I had no idea at the time that that would be leading to the cover art of this deck. And the cover art also has, right in the center, we have the North Star. I added the constellations later, and the constellations came through really working with the Pegasus mythic being who's also in the deck. So anyways, that's just a little backstory. But I hope that this was inspiring for you. Thank you so much for listening or watching, depending on where you're tuning in from. I'd love to hear what stands out for you. Have you worked with The Artist's Way? If so, what about it has been impactful for you? And again, we have a cohort that got started last week, and we actually have a couple more spaces for more folks if you want to join us this coming Monday, March 30th. We'll be talking about chapter 1, and there's just so much power in exploring this work in community. So if you're curious about The Artist's Way, lean into it, find a community, find a network, and it's just incredible to me how much this book continues to inspire more aliveness and creative unfoldments in ways I could never expect. So sending you so much love. Thank you so much for listening. That's all for now. Bye.